Okay, I'm going to make a batch of clam chowder. Usually do this when I can actually get a bunch of cans of clams. Pretty much got them at the dollar store for $1 a piece. So I have 8 cans of clams, about a gallon of milk. In this case, I'm just using organic 1% milk. To finish it off, I'm going to put some half and half into it. I got some celery. I will add some onion. And then I'm going to start out by cutting up and frying some bacon. Basically, I'll just cut it into a little bit smaller pieces, but then I'll end up chopping it up after I'm done. Then I'll need to cut up some celery. I'll need to cut up some onions. I'll need to cut up some potatoes. And I'll need to open all these cans of clams before I can start. So what I'm going to start out doing is basically I'm going to open the cans of clams after I got the bacon started to fry on the stove. Probably won't show the whole process because all you want to do is basically fry the bacon until it's crispy but not black, obviously. But bacon I have obviously doesn't have a lot of meat in it, but it's actually bulk bacon, and I bought it for $1 a pound, so I can't complain. It gives me the bacon flavor I want. So I'm going to start out basically by getting everything prepped up, and then I'll be back. By draining the clams, what I'm going to do is actually use the juice for cooking up the vegetables until they're tender. Then I'll put the clams back in there later, but for now I'm going to do just leave it as is. Frying up some bacon, I just want it to be very, very crispy, but not well cooked. And I decided I'm just going to use mostly the center of the celery stalk. One more piece. Until they actually get all the, actually just the celery and the onions cut up, I'm going to just put them in a bowl. And once the bacon's cooked enough, I'm going to Okay, I guess you get the idea. Flour and everything else cook a little bit. So I'm going to put the clam stock back in there. Put a little milk in there. I'm just going to try to get all the juice I can. Same with the cans. So while I'm doing that, I'll be back. I got the pot on the stove, obviously, with the vegetables cooking up in the clam juice. I used a little bit of milk because obviously I was just draining out the clam cans for you with all that leftover meat that gets stuck in there, and the juice that I don't want to waste. The potatoes I'm actually going to use are basically pre-prepped. So I'll basically have to put them in there and cook them until they're just tender but not mushy. And then the final step will actually be to thicken it up. And then that will actually include the half and half I have left over, the milk I'm going to use, potatoes, the vegetables are already in there, the bacon and the clam meat. So I'll be back as soon as I get to that point. The veggies are still cooking in the clam juice, and in the meantime I actually put the milk into a glass container because I have a little trick. So essentially the pot with the potatoes and onions and celery pretty much only just covered with just a little bit of liquid, just enough to cover them so they can actually cook. Once they're at the right consistency, or I don't know, basically they're not too soft or they're not too hard, but just a little bit more done they are now. So they're boiling on the pot. In the meantime, I'm going to prep up the milk, and I prep up the half and half. Heat up microwave. If you heat up milk in the microwave in a glass bowl, it obviously saves you some time, and obviously you probably won't, it isn't as easy to scorch. It's already hot when you put it in the pot. If that's the case, basically what I'll end up doing is I got to make some roux. In this case, the roux is actually going to be just bacon fat and flour, and I'll cook it long enough to basically, so that it doesn't still taste like flour. Then when it comes time, I'll just basically thicken it up. We'll reserve the half and half, and a little bit of it anyways, just in case I make it a little bit too thick. But like I say, after the vegetables are cooked, I'm going to add the milk. The rest of the milk, I'm going to add the clam juice and the bacon that I got here, and I'm going to thicken it up, season it, and then it should be ready to go. We added the hot milk. I guess I couldn't say it's hot, but it was actually hotter than it was when I took it out of the refrigerator. So while I get that heated up to temperature, really we've got to have the whole works to boiling. So while I'm waiting for that to happen, I am making some roux. And what I started out with for the roux was, like I said, I was going to use bacon fat. I used a little bit of vegetable oil. and heat vegetable oil and the bacon up on the, or the bacon grease on the stove until it was hot. I'm going to add a little bit more oil. So essentially the roux should be see, 50% fat and 50% flour, but I guess I usually like to have it a little bit more thin, maybe 60-40, so 60% fat or oil to 40% flour. So that's actually the consistency that I have. I guess they would maybe suggest you brown it for certain things, but actually I just need to really get it hot, even though it's basically flour and oil. It'll still bubble on the stove when you got it on high. I'm going to turn it off now. Let it finish up. So I'm going to add the clam meat and the bacon back to the stock. We can actually do now while we're waiting for this all to get hot enough to add the roux. We can check the seasoning. So, just going to start out by adding a little bit of salt. And if I can find it, I'm actually going to put a little bit of white pepper in. I don't have any recipes, but I'm just going to put probably not more than a teaspoon of white pepper in there. Stir it up real good. I think what I'm going to do, I guess I don't have any fresh garlic, so I'm probably going to use a little bit of garlic salt in it too. But grab a couple of spoons. Check the flavor. A little bit of salt. Garlic salt here somewhere. Well, this is garlic salt, so didn't have much more than a teaspoon and a half in that container that was left. But I usually add a little bit of garlic. Oh, goodness. Okay. So I usually add all the salt and other seasonings to it, so it actually tastes pretty good before adding the roux, thickening it up. So at this point, Actually, I have to just let it get a little bit hotter. I'll be back. Chowder is mostly hot, so what I'm going to do is actually just add most of the roux. Just going to start to thicken it up. I just pour the rest of the half and half in with the rest of the roux. Try to deglaze the pan, clean it out. And after this gets a little bit hotter, we'll be ready to serve. Okay, I guess pretty much the way it should be. Consistency is about right for me, anyway. I suppose that some people have a little different preference, but that's how I like it. And so it's pretty much ready to go into